Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome one and all to this, the Cult Movie Podcast, Cult Potato. As always, I am your host, Campion, and joining me is my ever-faithful co-host, Mr. Grady Hooker, who you may not be aware of this, Grady, but you are descended from a great king.
Okay. Not the worst intro I've received, but I'll take it.
Do you know who that king was, Grady?
King Booker.
Booker? What, Booker T?
Yeah.
Are you his long-lost nephew?
You never know.
I'm not going to touch that. But,
Which king have I descended from, Campion?
From you, Grady. You're your own king.
Oh no. This intro did just get weird. I preferred it last episode when you completely forgot you were meant to give an intro.
Right, I still haven't remembered what that was. I'm going to remember at some point, and I'm going to come back to it, and then when I come back to it, you're going to be like, wow, that was not worth the wait.
You're not going to just subtly reference Michael J. Fox movies throughout this episode?
No. Although I only know of, I cannot... Real talk, the only Michael J. Fox movie I can think of off the top of my head is this movie and Back to the Future. He's done so much other stuff. Only two things I can remember.
Oh no.
Well, technically 4 movies if you count all the Back to the Future sequels as well. But
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know that we're a whole 2 minutes into this episode and we haven't even said the title?
I know, right? But Grady, speaking of descended from ancient kings...
Oh, is this your horrible segue?
Shut up! What film are we talking about today?
Campion, we are talking about Treasure Planet.
Yes, that's right. The early 2000s Disney classic, often overlooked, but in my opinion, pretty fantastic.
I'll be honest, I thought this movie was Treasure Planet.
Based on the Robert Louis Stevenson classic Treasure Island, but updated with more of a sci-fi kind of feel. Yeah, I remember seeing that movie a lot when I was like a little kid, and I don't know, there's something about seafaring exploration in space have always really just, kickstarted my imagination, and I guess putting them both into the same film really did it for me. And I know I've heard some complaints about how, why are they just going off in on boats that look like ships? Why couldn't it just be regular ships on water? Or why couldn't it be spaceships? It's a weird production design that a lot of people aren't into, but I'm into that weird combination of futuristic sci-fi and early 1700s golden age of exploration kind of aesthetic there.
I legit thought when we'd been hyping this movie up until the point when maybe 20 minutes into the movie I realized that this was not Treasure Planet.
Great. Okay, yes, but Grady, what? It's not called Treasure Planet for starters. Okay, the movie we're actually going to be doing is Atlantis: The Lost Empire. I was just seeing how long I could, vamp on a film I haven't seen since I was a teenager.
Look, it's not my fault. Why are these movies so similar? Why did my brain think that this was Treasure Planet?
I don't know, Grady, considering they have completely different titles.
Look, when I'd been saying, I remember this movie from my childhood, they did a KFC cross... No, that was Treasure Planet. Everything that I talked about, hyping up this movie, being like, yeah, I've seen it before, I know this and that, was all about Treasure Planet. I don't know if I've ever seen this movie in my life before.
They are wildly different films, Grady. I don't know how on earth you got them. Don't get me wrong, I think they're both underrated classics, definitely. And I guess they both do capture that early 20th century, early 19th to 20th century age of exploration and stuff. And, less so in the 20th century, I guess, but... They are both beautifully animated films, and they both do incorporate heavy amounts of CG and traditional 2D animation, but they're very different movies, Grady. One's a straight up fantasy, the other's a science fiction. I don't know how you could confuse both of them.
I don't know either. I took 3 notes on this movie, and one of them just says, "What the hell, this isn't Treasure Planet."
At no point did I use the phrase Treasure Planet, Greg.
Nope.
I think this is the first time we've discussed Treasure Planet, period,
Yep.
on this podcast. And you want a Treasure Planet mini episode. I love that movie. I think it's pretty great.
Look, I don't know why my brain connected these 2 films. For some reason, I guess... I don't even know when Treasure Planet came out. I'm assuming it was 2003 or 4-ish. Like, these 2 movies just became the same movie. For no reason in child Grady's brain, and adult Grady just never rewatched Treasure Planet and never watched Atlantis to distinguish the 2 as separate movies. They were just the same movie to me. But that's enough about child Grady's horrible...
You did watch the correct movie, right? Like, I'm not actually gonna have to launch into a proper review about Treasure Planet now, am I?
We were meant to watch the one about Milo, right?
Yes, about Milo Thatch, a linguistics and cartographer searching for the lost city of Atlantis.
Yes, that is definitely the movie I watched, but I do a little bit want to go watch Treasure Planet.
I mean, we could just make that... We can extend out Animation Month and just watch Treasure Planet next if you want. It is a cult classic, so it does qualify.
Let's get through the Atlantis the Lost Empire, where you've claimed is going to be the longest episode, and... If the start of this episode...
I don't believe I ever did that on the show. Did I?
This episode is already gone for like 7 minutes, and we have barely talked about the movie because I started just launching into Treasure Planet. So, it's on track to be the longest one so far.
Alright, Grady, let's get back on track. Tell us a bit about Atlantis, the Lost Empire.
There's this nerdy guy called Milo. He, due to his grandfather's ambitions, really wants to discover Atlantis. He's done some cool stuff. He thinks he's found a book that's going to really help him in the middle of Iceland. Turns out his grandfather already found the book, given it to his eccentric friend to give to Milo. And then Milo's like, let's go, and teams up with a totally not evil army guy and a bunch of eclectic characters to go down and try and steal this ancient power source from a set of civilization, dooming them all and killing every last one of them. Did I get any plot point wrong?
Nope, it's a pretty succinct description there. It's effectively your classic Journey to the Center of the Earth style thing. We're going underground to all of these fantastic places beneath the earth, and off on daring adventures, seeing all the strange phenomena in search of well, I think in Journey to the Center of the Earth, they just got stuck down there accidentally and they were just trying to survive. But here they're in search of glory and riches in the lost city.
And the ancient power source was the power that was in us all along.
Well, then the big spinny crystal face thing.
It was in us all along. And then later on in the movie, you discover that this ancient civilization has really cool flying motorcycles, and that they just didn't know how to put the key.
That look like fish.
They just didn't know how to put the key into the motorcycle, but all of a sudden know how to ride and obey the road rules instantly. They just didn't know how to turn a key.
Yeah, exactly. I believe this is the second movie in a row that features cool motorcycles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that trend keeps going. I don't know. It's a little crazy to me that these beings have like joint knowledge of so many years, like thousands of years, and didn't know how to turn the key in these vehicles that had been laying around.
Yeah, and actually, it's not just the motorcycles that carry over. This is also our second film that features John Mahoney playing an older, respectable authority figure.
Are we going to talk about the voice cast?
Well, no, I was just bringing it up. We can, go into depth later. We could just launch straight into that now, because this film has, like, one hell of a cast.
Well, you talk about the main one. I only want Cookie.
Okay, so of course, our cast, we have Michael J. Fox, who you know from, Back to the Future being his most famous role, but of course he's done a lot of things. Like, he's done a lot of things. I think, like, Teen Wolf and the Frighteners are some of his oldest ones. I'm trying to remember that one movie I saw, and it was like a 180s movie. The Hard Way? No. I'm just looking on his Wikipedia. It's like, I know I've seen it. The Secret of My Success, that was his other one that I also saw as a kid. Cree Summer, who you've heard is in, like, everything. If you've watched something animated, especially during the early 2000s, you have heard Cree Summer. She is a very prolific voice actor who has been in a lot of different things, and she, despite the fact that she has really good acting range, she has a very distinctive kind of voice.
Mm-hmm.
So, fantastic actor, I love her. I remember Kids Next Door being like the big thing for me, like during my childhood. She voiced number 5 in that.
Can we just do a whole episode on Codename Kids Next Door?
I think that technically counts as a cult classic, so we probably could. I actually rewatched that a few years ago. Still holds up surprisingly well. Still pretty solid, I have to say.
I'm just saying, there's a lot of stuff in that, lot of piece, like Codename Kids Next Door. I know they're not as culty, but like American Dragon or Jackie Chan Adventures. A lot of nostalgia sitting in that era.
That'll be. I don't know, I guess that'll be a topic for a future season. Let's see. David Ogden Stiers is another one. Jim Varney is a very famous one.
Oh, crazy that you mention him.
Not so much famous in our country, but overseas, I think he's very well known for, like, the Ernest. Have I got that correct? Yeah, he played the Ernest character in a bunch of, like, commercials and films in the United States. I don't think Ernest was, like, a big thing over here, though.
No, but Campion, do you know what was a massive thing over here that featured Jim Varney?
What?
Three Ninjas, High Noon at Mega Mountain, where he is the main villain, Lothar Zog.
God damn it. Oh, you always get me with the Three Ninjas stuff. It's something I know nothing about, so you can always blindside me with that.
Yep.
Oh. Wait, are you talking about Three Ninjas, which stars WWE legend Hulk Hogan?
No, that's the same movie as the one that has Jim Varney, High Noon at Mega Mountain, number 4.
Oh, wow.
But continue on with the cast. Jim Varney is the only one I wanted to rant off of.
Jim Varney, John Mahoney, of course. Actually, just quickly on Jim Varney, this was actually the last film he worked on before he died. I figured I probably shouldn't brush over that, you know, should just probably bring that up. But of course, John Mahoney, who we'd previously, who featured in a previous episode we've done when we talked about the Iron Giant. Although the most famous thing John Mahoney is known for is, of course, Frasier, where he plays Martin Crane in that show.
Pretty big role.
Yes, and probably my favorite piece of the cast that I never realized as a child. The Atlantean King is played by Leonard Nimoy, aka Mr. Spock from Star Trek: The Original Series. I didn't realize that, but when I when he came on screen and he started talking, and I'm just sitting there and I'm going like, is that Leonard Nimoy? Is that fucking Leonard Nimoy? Is that Spock? Oh, I love it whenever he shows up.
Yeah.
He also shows up. He also plays a role in Kingdom Hearts, which threw me for a loop when I was replaying that series. Just like, why is he here?
Yeah.
And Christopher Lee and Mark Hamill. I don't know what they're all doing in Kingdom Hearts. Sorry, it's Disney related, so it counts. It's still on topic.
This is how you end up getting the episode so long. We just talk about 50 million other things. We talk about Three Ninjas for a little while. We talk about Treasure Planet for a little while. We talk about Kingdom Hearts for a little while. Because I'm going to be honest, we're now 15 minutes into this episode. We've given a basic, rough rundown of the plot, and that's all we've really done. And hit the cast.
The cast.
But to be fair, the cast is amazing, and
It is.
even though you may not recognize like these names that we're throwing out, if you're like me and don't recognize, specific people, as Campion said about like Cree Summer, just take a quick look at their Wikipedia or their IMDb, because you have heard these voices somewhere.
Definitely. And as a side note, Cree Summers also returned for the sequel that this movie surprisingly got, but we'll talk about that later.
We could also just never talk about that.
Okay, Grady, you were dropping the hints before we started the episode, so you didn't like this movie, did you, Grady?
I didn't hate it.
Oh, that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign, Grady.
Look, it's a film. I watched it. I didn't want to rip out my eyeballs. That puts it above 50% of the films we've watched for this podcast. I just found it very meh. Not bad, not good, just meh.
So you hated it?
I didn't hate it.
You hated this movie, Grady.
I enjoyed my time watching it. Would I watch it again? Probably not. Did I think it was Treasure Planet? Yes.
Do you just want to do Treasure Planet, Grady?
Nah, it was.
We could do Treasure Planet next week if you really want to. I'd be down. I like that movie.
We stick to the schedule. It's a fine film. I don't know, something just failed to connect with me with the film. Like, it's weird because the voice cast is awesome. The characters are awesome. Like that supporting cast. Maybe it's, your main crew, with Keita, Milo, and the commander. I don't know, just something didn't click. There wasn't that little pizzazz that made me want to come back and watch it over and over and over again.
I think I might know what that issue is. I struggled with this for years because this is a film that I've loved, but I'm aware of the critical reception that this film got, and I think spoilers, but this film did not do well financially. So Disney
bad.
No, yes it did, and Disney pretty much black holed this thing. But I struggle to remember it, then rewatching as an adult, I think I get it. It's something that worked for me as a child, but it has issues in its story. But before we get on to that, let's talk about the things that I think we can both agree on are pretty good. So this is Disney. They have ludicrously talented animators and a lot of money to throw at a project. So of course it looks fantastic, and this was it wasn't the earliest, but this is definitely one of the earlier films, especially in Disney's catalog, that was starting to incorporate 3D animation with 2D animation. And I think that it works really well here. I think the two standout ones is that the main sub, the Ulysses, and the Atlantean war machine, the Leviathan. Those are the two big CG things, and they look fantastic.
Yeah, you can't argue with those two for sure. The Leviathan had me a little and then it showed up and it was like, okay, that was not what I had expected. I didn't expect it to be like a defense mechanism for the city. It was quite cool.
Yeah, because I'm a fan of giant robots, Grady, and the Leviathan is a very, very fantastic looking giant robot. The big lobster thing, the colossal sized lobster thing that could shoot lightning out of its mouth. Big fan. Big fan. I think the art design in this film in general is also pretty amazing, especially with the way that all of the Atlantean technology and architecture looks. It has a really... Because it looks Disney, the way the characters are designed and stuff, but I think that it has enough of its own style that it can really stand on its own.
Interestingly, both myself and one of my partners, when watching this film, got Lilo and Stitch vibes from the animation and the style and some of the characters and everything. So I looked it up. It was similar studio. But that's the vibes that I got off of it for an animation style.
Yeah, I can see that. I would, whilst they do say I think the art design in this is stronger than Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Stitch probably straight up just looks better. Although Lilo and Stitch did come out a number of years after this, so they had a bit more under their belt. But Lilo and Stitch, the watercolor backgrounds in that film really did it for me, and I think that's kind of what edges out it over Atlantis. But like the Atlantean, like the Atlantean architecture in the whole city and everything looks so pretty. I love all that stuff.
Yeah, it's probably the best part of the film, in my opinion. Like, getting to Atlantis a little weak, but once you're in Atlantis, you are running, a mile a minute. The storylines does start coming out, the plot does start thickening. And you do start to see a little bit more from the characters. They aren't just as one note. But yeah, when you hit Atlantis, the movie picks up, for sure.
Yeah. It's odd, because I kind of have the opposite opinion. For me, the best part of the movie is sort of the journey there.
Okay.
And then it just, not so much when they arrive at Atlantis, but I do feel that it does kind of start to fall flat once they actually get there. I think that maybe if they'd either gotten to Atlantis sooner, or they focused more on the journey there, like, they're trying to have the best of both worlds, but I think if they'd focused on one or the other, it would have come out a lot stronger.
Well, the plot of the movie, like, what would you say is the single plot point of the movie? Is it Commander trying to steal the power source? I know it's hard to boil a whole...
I don't quite know what you mean by that.
Like, if you're trying to boil the whole movie down to, like, I guess, the key thing, like, if we were talking about Iron Giant, it would be, like, boy befriends giant. Let me flick back through my notes here. If we're talking about Akira, we're talking about, once he's got the powers and he's starting to go a little crazy. When we're talking about Shaun of the Dead, it's once the zombies start actually taking over. That's the plot. It's, can we survive these zombies?
Okay. You mean, like, what's sort of the crux of this entire movie?
Yeah.
Like, what does this movie hinge on?
Pretty much.
Okay. I feel that for a film like this, it's the journey to Atlantis. It's getting there. Like, once you're actually there, especially since whilst the city itself is kind of interesting, they don't do a whole lot with it. I mean, the people are there, but they don't really stand out or feel in any way, like, important. It's difficult for me to really connect with the city once we're there. Mm-hmm. It's, I think, because we don't spend a lot of time there, because we spend, most of the film trying to get there. I think, in fact, comparisons of this film have been made from this film to, like, a bunch of other ones, and one of them is the Studio Ghibli film Laputa, The Castle in the Sky. Have you seen that?
I have not seen that, no.
Okay. We should watch that. It's a dope movie. But for me, a lot of that film, it has similar things, like an ancient civilization built this great city, although in Laputa it's in the sky rather than under the ocean. But a lot of it is trying to get to this island, this castle in the sky, and it goes around a lot of these. There's a lot of sense of, like, wonder once you actually get there, and you get that here for the briefest moment when they first see Atlantis, but then it kind of tapers off as you go off and explore. Whereas in Laputa, once they actually get to Laputa, the flying city, it's empty. This is like a long dead civilization that's being kept alive purely by the machines and stuff, and so you're just left to wonder in awe at this mysterious city, all this great architecture, and not to pull a Dark Souls reference out of my ass.
That's what gets us the views.
But that just mentioning Dark Souls.
Yep, the algorithm loves us already.
Oh, yeah, you can put Dark Souls in the title, dude. Atlantis, the Dark Souls of the Disney animated canon. But
Probably
I think
that
sense of emptiness and mystery really does help to suck you in and connect it. Even though there's no emotional element for the people there, it really helps you to feel something about this place. a part of. Okay, I'm still talking about Dark Souls, but in Dark Souls, there's this one area of the game called An Orlando, and I think that works here because most of the game is like this dilapidated like shithole. Everyone is insane or dead. You know, nothing. It's like the post-apocalypse, pretty much, even though it really isn't. But you know, it's desolate, it's barren, everything is dead and rotting. But then you get to An Orlando, and it's this big, beautiful, empty city with these that's in like pristine condition with these towering cathedrals and all this. And I feel that they didn't do anything with the people in Atlantis, so I think if they had gone that route, it would have been a lot more interesting, and that sense of mystery really would have propped up the film, and we could have just focused on our core cast members rather than be like, oh hey, we're in the city now, it's the last third of the film, but hey, let's introduce a bunch of let's introduce some new characters that you need to care about.
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna say, Campion, before the credits roll, so from the start of the movie to the credits roll, there is 1 hour and 30 minutes of film for Atlantis: The Lost Empire. At what time code do you think that they crossed the bridge into Atlantis the first time?
50 minutes?
43 minutes.
Okay.
So, over half the film is in Atlantis.
It does not feel like that. It does... Oh, really?
Yeah, well, 45 minutes is half of an hour and a half.
Yeah, you're right. Wow, it does not feel like that. Huh.
I pulled it up and just scrubbed through it, because I was pretty certain we got to Atlantis early on.
Okay. Well, I guess that to me, that's just because Atlantis did feel kind of flat, so I guess to me that it just...
the movie stopped.
Yeah, like, there just isn't a lot of meat there, so it just honestly felt like there wasn't... I guess that's why it felt like later, because there just wasn't a lot there for me.
Mm-hmm. If you're talking about, like, when the ship leaves, or the submarine leaves, there's 15 minutes of movie before that to get out of the way, and then about half an hour of journey, and then 45 minutes of Atlantis. In terms of the breakdown of this film, and I agree that breakdown is wrong. I think we disagree in different ways, but we agree that is not the right breakdown of time.
Yeah. Like, it should have gone for one or the other. It should have focused on, like, the more...
Just make it 2 movies. Or do a horrible sequel.
I think they actually...
That we don't talk about.
I don't know this off the top of my head, but I think they may have planned to do multiple films about this. But they ended up just having to do the one.
Oh, there's no way they did multiple films after this reception.
No. In fact, they're lucky they managed to crank out a sequel. But, yeah, something I haven't mentioned up until now is that one of the designers on the film, like one of the significant creative influences, is actually the creator of Hellboy, Mike Mignola.
I'm not familiar with his name, but there feels like there's a lot of connecting tissue with this movie and a bunch of other movies. Like, again, one of my partners yelled out that it looked very Avatar-y, you know, obviously going to another land, and you have a native of that land showing you around, and very reminiscent of that movie as well. And maybe that's what it comes down to. Maybe this movie just didn't have enough unique factors or a selling point. I know you said that there was something that you were thinking of what I thought the movie was missing, or why it didn't connect with me. Are you willing to share that theory of why it didn't connect with me yet? Or you've completely forgotten?
I've already done that. Like with the Did you just miss like the 10-minute rant I just went on, Grady, explaining why I thought this film didn't work and what issues it had?
I thought there was a specific crux of a thing. No, I don't know.
Actually, if I had to expand on that, I would say that most of the side characters are pretty fun. Like, they're not deep, but they're supposed to be like the fun supporting cast for an adventure film. We don't really need a lot from them. But our main trio, well, actually, Kita's fine. She's okay. She plays her role quite well. But like the villain Rourke and Milo, our hero, there isn't really a lot to them. Rourke is
so
pretty,
flat.
Yeah, Rourke is extremely one note, and he just kind of like turns on evil on a dime, and Milo is just, he's just the wimpy kind of nerd guy. And then for most of the film, the cast don't like him for no established reason, and then they just kind of forgive him out of the blue, and they become friends somehow. Like, he doesn't do anything in particular. It just, the characters are not... Okay, well, the side cast is actually pretty fun, and I do really like them. But yeah, the main cast, they're not strong enough to carry a film. Like, everything else is more or less doing all of the legwork to really bring you along on its journey.
Yeah, it almost feels like there was no arc for anybody in this film. Everybody came into it and everybody went out of it, and as you say, the supporting characters opted to side with Milo, but that wasn't like a character change. They didn't come into it evil and come out of it good. They just came into it wanting money and left getting money. Like,
Milo's character arc is that he got laid.
That's pretty much it. There was just, every character, like the General Rourke did nothing. He came into it angry villain man. He came out of it angry villain man. His second in command barely had anything and had almost no development whatsoever. And she was meant to be the villain for a sequel that went down the drain. So I don't know. It just feels like you had so much airtime and nobody got developed and nothing changed.
Yeah, like our characters don't really go anywhere, like emotionally or personality wise.
They sit.
Yeah. And it's a shame, because I feel like with, you tighten up the story a little bit, you strengthen up the cast, and I think it honestly could have... Because I love this movie, right? I've been crapping on it a lot, but I do genuinely love this movie. It still gives me, reminds me of like when I was a child and watching this, and, how all the different machines and stuff, and about how Atlantis itself, how it really sparked my imagination as a child. But like, it has problems, and I feel like a lot of what makes me still enjoy this film, a lot of it is my nostalgia doing all the legwork.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you actually enjoyed this film or if you just nostalgia'd this film.
Don't get me wrong, I still enjoyed my watch, but I wasn't invested in it. For me, it was like, this was an hour and a half that I enjoyed. I felt like I spent it well. It was a fun ride. And that was it. I didn't go away feeling any different. I didn't feel like it made me think about anything. I'm not particularly attached to any of the characters. I more or less came away from it, having, wasted an hour and a half, but with a good time. And that's all that it really did. It's not like the Iron Giant, where I came away and I'm just like, that was really good. Like, I really got invested into those characters.
Mm-hmm.
Story.
Yeah, and weirdly enough, I guess that's echoing what I was trying to say at the start. You probably got better words. But yeah, it wasn't what it should have been. It could have been so much more. It could have been better.
Yeah. And it's funny, Michael J. Fox, he was offered a role between this and another film, and he let his son choose the role, so he ended up choosing Atlantis. The other film, Titan AE, also fulfills it fulfills a very similar role that this film did in my childhood. A film that's really pretty, uses a lot of mixture of like 2D and 3D animation, something that I was really attached to as a child, and I rewatched, and I'm just like, this is pretty and it's good, but wow, this has a lot of problems, and I can see why it didn't do very well. It also maintains a cult classic status, So I do like that that both of these films from my childhood that aren't as good as I remember, like it's just very funny to me that they're connected like that.
Yeah, I said a meh film at the start, and I guess to numbers people, the best way to describe it is just like, it's a 5 or 6 out of 10. It's nothing special.
Yeah, I'd give it a solid 6. Like, it's definitely worth a watch. It's a fun time. But, like, you're not going to want to watch it again. This is probably the last time I'm ever going to watch this movie. Which is sad, because I rewatched this a lot as a child, and yeah.
The childlike wonder is gone.
The childlike wonder is gone, Grady. I just can't enjoy anything anymore.
It's dead.
It's dead, yes. And it's a shame that it wasn't as good as it could have been, and that it didn't do as well as Disney would have liked it to. Because I feel like if this was a if this was a better film and it had been more successful, Atlantis as a franchise could have been pretty interesting.
Yeah, it almost feels like it could have been, like, Disney have done a lot of stuff. Obviously, Disney Animation have done amazing things here and there, but they filled their niche now. And it feels like they settled into that niche because they tried films like Atlantis and they didn't work. Like, if Atlantis had worked, I don't know what sort of Disney films we'd have been getting, but we'd have been getting something special. I think I read that this had the highest body count of any Disney animated film.
A lot of people die in this movie.
That was just something that, like, you wouldn't get nowadays in a Disney film.
No. It's, like, if you look at the Disney films that came before and since, it's a very different movie. Like, you know, especially compared to the previous films that came out before this. Like, there's no songs, there's no talking animals. Whilst it does have its comic relief, it is a relatively serious action-adventure film that's, you know, it's still aiming for that family market, but it's it's trying to get, like, a more of that older audience in there. The same kind of audience a film like, I don't know, Indiana Jones or something, you know, would appeal to. Yeah,
it's almost like you want to get that 11 to 14 instead of that 6 to 9.
Yeah, they wanted that Marvel demographic, Grady.
Well, they did not get it whatsoever with this film.
Oh, they got it. They got it eventually, but they had to, you know.
That's true.
They had to spend a few billion to get a Star Wars and Marvel. In fact, I think if you had the question of what Disney films would have looked like, they would have looked a lot like Marvel movies, if I had to be completely honest.
Yeah, I guess Marvel has sort of let Disney pick that direction, right? They can make the kids' movies, and I don't mean that as a derogatory term towards the specific movies, but they can make the kids' movies, the family movies, and then they can go out and make the stupid superhero movies that are just action-adventure things, and then they can go off and do the massive sci-fi stuff with the Star Wars universe. Them owning these things just sort of allowed them to separate off all of their bits and pieces, really.
Yeah. Of course, you know, just we're slowly getting to the point where Disney just buys out everything.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Pixar there, to be fair.
They own Fox as well. They own it's The Simpsons and Family Guy, so.
Yeah, they do. It's weird, though, because, like, if you'd played me this movie, you took off all of the title placards, you took off everything, I probably wouldn't have sat here and told you it was a Disney film. I would have sat here and been maybe a little confused about where it actually came from, but I wouldn't have been able to place it. And I don't know if that's because it came out in 2001. I don't know if that's because it's so different to Disney films that were coming out at the time. But it doesn't feel Disney.
Yeah. And it is very different, and it's an experiment that I really wish had worked out, but I'm glad that they tried it at the very least, because for the longest time this was my favorite Disney film, and
since then it's now Frozen 2.
I haven't even seen that, actually. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen either of the Frozens.
You haven't seen the first Frozen?
No.
Oh, well, I know what we're doing for the next April Fool's Day video.
What do you mean April Fool's Day video?
And there's... I suppose that because I could feel our conversation kind of winding up to an end here, but there's still a few more things I want to...
No, you've got to drag this out for another 20 minutes, Campion.
For it to classify as the longest episode we've ever done.
Don't make me go get the runtime of Willy Wonka.
Why did I say that? Anyway, a very interesting and weird tidbit about this movie is that the Atlantean language that you see in there, it is like an actual proper language that was created by a linguist. It was created by the same guy who made Klingon and stuff like that for Star Trek, and it is like an actual proper language. Well, I say proper. It's a functional language, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it has a grammatical structure, it has its own alphabet. I'm not enough of a linguist to really go any more into detail, but I just know it exists. It has its own separate Wikipedia entry, so which outlines like how the language works. It has different tenses, I guess, and different tense verbs. They
put a lot of effort into it.
Yeah, they put a lot of effort into the background of this film, and I think a big reason why it's managed to maintain a cult following is just the fact that is the amount of effort that the backgrounds got put into this. Like, I really, really love the art design of this, and that is predominantly because, as I said before, the visual style was was created by Mike Mignola, the guy who created Hellboy, and there are a few shots in this movie where I'm just like, that looks like it's right out of Hellboy. That is his art style. In particular, the scene where after they fall down that big crevice after being chased by the fireflies, and Commander Rourke lights up the match and it's lighting up half of his face. That is quintessential Hellboy. Heavy amounts of inky darkness with like a sharp contrast to color. That is 100% Hellboy.
Yeah. I just struggle with this film. Like, we've talked about it so many times about just different things that could have just took this from a 6 out of 10 up to a 9 out of 10.
Yeah. Because I feel like it was close. It was so close to that. There are so many things about this movie that could have made it absolutely amazing. And I think I just find this film very frustrating, I suppose, is what I'm looking for. This could have been a fantastic movie, and it wasn't, but it was close, and that really, really frustrates me.
I took 3 notes while we were watching this film. One of them was, this isn't Treasure Planet, and one of them was likening it to Avatar and Lilo and Stitch. But the other one, for some reason, I just wanted to point this out, Grady at the time thought it was worth writing out in handwriting the exact full joke. You're so skinny, if you turned sideways and poked out your tongue, you'd look like a zip.
Where was that? Was that from the movie?
Yep. That was from the movie.
That.
The crew were making fun of Milo before they sort of like accepted him during that journey portion.
Okay.
They were hazing the guy. But I think it was when Cookie was trying to feed them all. It might have even been uttered by Cookie. But, like, there's gems in this. That, to me, no matter how stupid the joke is, it's funny to me. There's small little gems in this film that are great. They're just covered by grime. They need to be polished up a little.
Yeah, I think polish is definitely a good way to put this. Like, it feels that some of the aspects are really creative and really well done, where some of them feel like a bit of executive overthink. Like people coming in saying, "Oh, we need it to be like this. Oh, we need a weird a little comic relief guy here. That's what people love. Oh, we need this to be changed and this to be changed." There is a good movie in there, and like I said before, it just irritates me that it never got to shine as brightly as it should have. And I find films that are almost great but aren't, and they're so close, I find those the most frustrating to watch, because I know what it could be, and it's not being that, and I find it very disappointing.
Yeah, frustrating, I think, is the big word that came back to it. It's just so tough when you see a film that, and this is coming from two, like, monkeys who know a little bit about filmmaking, but like 2% of anybody who worked on this film. Yeah. And we're just sitting here being like, oh, you could have just tweaked this, or you could have just tweaked this. This film came out 21 years ago.
Yeah.
Who knows what was happening 21 years ago? How many iterations this movie took. It was, being produced for ages. These things don't happen overnight. Somebody thought this was the absolute best cut of it. Hey, I agree.
If it's Disney, it was probably a boardroom of people.
That's true.
Let's be real, it's Disney. Let's not give them too much credit.
I agree. I just went to Wikipedia to have a quick scroll through to double check the box office numbers and stuff like that. And
yeah,
there's a quote here which talks about how it gained its cult following because it was labeled as a mistreated classic, due in part to Mignola's artistic influence. And I can get on board with that. I could get on board with it being a mistreated classic, but it's not like some of these films we talk about were like ignored when they were released, but now they're god tier because we've come back and actually looked at them and they're amazing.
Stuff like The Thing, like that was panned upon release, and now it's considered like one of the greatest films ever made.
This was like panned, and now I think it deserved better, but it's still middle of the road movie.
Yeah, like this is a decent movie that was panned as a terrible movie.
Yeah.
And
that's the label. Put that on the box.
Right there. That's the one critic quote I'm ever gonna get on a movie. A decent film that was treated as a terrible one.
Yeah.
Ship it. But it's But to be fair, as frustrating as it is, it actually did win it was nominated and it won a surprise. Okay, it won one award, but it was nominated for a surprising
one.
It was nominated for a surprising number of awards. A lot of it has to do with like its soundtrack, which is amazing, and its art design and everything like that. It also got nominated for some awards from the Political Film Society, which I didn't know was a thing, for things like democracy and human rights and peace, which I don't know where that comes from, but okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna not touch that one with the 10-foot barge pole.
Let's not touch that. But, yeah. So, Grady, you want me to chuck some numbers at you?
It's numbers time, baby.
It's numbers time. Okay, so budget estimated somewhere between $90 and $120 million. Of that, it only made back $186 million. And at first you're just like, well, at least it made its money back and it made a bit of a profit. However, when it comes to advertising budgets for these big movies, there's no hard and fast rule, but the general rule of thumb that people go for guesstimating this kind of stuff is that you double the film's budget. And so, if we double the film's budget, it barely made even, and that's being like generous, assuming the budget is like $90 million. It did not do well.
It did better than Treasure Planet, which came out 1 year later, also from the Walt Disney Company.
Did it?
Yeah, $140 million budget, $110 box office.
Wow. Okay. I honestly thought that did better, because I genuinely think Treasure Planet's a stronger movie.
No, I guess people took the risk with Atlantis and didn't want to take it again with Treasure Planet.
That would actually make perfect sense. But anyway, of course, as we mentioned before, in later years, people would start to look on it more favorably. It's... as you said before, like, articles and stuff have been written in later years talking about this film and about how it's like this, not so much hidden gem, but how it was definitely mistreated at the time of its release. And is a bit of a fun fact for you, Grady. This film did get a video game release, which I actually really liked. I played through a bit of it in preparation for this podcast. Grady, I think the video game's better than the movie.
Oh.
It's actually a pretty solid game. It's mission based. It's kind of Legend of Zelda-y, and you can swap between the different characters of the film and stuff who all have like different abilities and stuff. But it's actually a pretty good game. It looks pretty good for a PS1 game. I'm not gonna. Yeah, admittedly, I didn't play through the whole thing, but from what I played, it controlled really well. It looks really nice. They got all the voice actors from the movie back, so the tutorial is narrated by John Mahoney, which is strange. But yeah, it's actually a pretty solid game, and I think that's really funny. The soundtrack. Oh, actually, we didn't talk about the soundtrack, did we?
No, we didn't.
I thought it was really good. I think it's a really good soundtrack.
That's fair. I didn't, like... To me, a good soundtrack I don't notice, right? I didn't think that there was anything crazy or bad or horrible about the soundtrack. But it didn't stand out to me and go like, oh my god.
For me, only like one piece really stands out. It's the scene where Kida is going into like the big crystal spinny head maze thingy.
Yep.
That's a really dope piece of music. But anyway, as I've mentioned before in previous episodes, I lack the musical lexicon to properly describe it. I'm just like, it sounds good, and it's
ears make happy, good feel.
Anyway, and in 2021, which was the 20-year anniversary for Atlantis, Disney's Twitter, they actually acknowledged it. They said, hey, it's the 20-year anniversary, and there was actually like a 5-hour live stream done by like the cast and crew of the film. So they cared, which surprised me. And not only that, but in 2019, apparently, in 2019 and also another report in 2020, Disney is apparently working on a live-action remake of Atlantis.
Good luck.
Of all the films, this is actually the one I think deserves a live-action remake the most, because it looks good in animation, but I think a live-action version might actually work a lot better.
Why not Treasure Planet Campion? Treasure Planet Wave.
Well, they actually might be. So let me quickly double check. You never know with Disney. Because I think it is, for me, I'm like, if you're going to remake a film, remake the ones that didn't work, or the ones that weren't as good.
Yeah. And
then try to do better. So, because I abhor, like, The Jungle Book and The Lion King and The Beauty and the Beast, because those are already fantastic movies. But hey, a remake of Atlantis? Yeah. I mean, it's a flawed film that had some interesting ideas. Take another crack at it. Why not?
The hilarious part is I'm sitting here on the Treasure Planet wiki, and I just found like a piece that I thought was funny. It's like, following the box office failure of Atlantis, Disneyland planned a second attempt to revive its submarine voyage ride with a Treasure Planet theme. These plans were scrapped due to the film suffering the exact same problems as its predecessor. They tried twice, and they failed twice.
Yes, I was going to talk about that because I have actually seen those submarines. I went to Disneyland as a kid. I didn't get to do the submarine ride because it had been out of commission for decades before I went there. But when I went to Disneyland, so I've seen the pond where the ride was supposed to be, but the thing itself doesn't exist anymore. However, in Disneyland Tokyo, one of the submarines from the ride was tooled up to kind of look like a Jules Verne inspired submarine, and is currently sitting as like a prop piece in the artificial volcano they have at Tokyo Disney Sea. So that was really cool to see. I just knew that off the top of my head, Grady.
Wow, there's some bangers up there.
That's the kind of garbage I fill my brain with. I don't do it with anything useful. Just garbage.
That's fair. Well, unless you wrap it up soon, you might actually hit your longest limit. We can drag or we can wrap.
To be honest, I've actually run out of stuff to talk about. Like, okay. Unless, we just, finish up with our final thoughts in the film, and then we can wrap this up. I think we can finish just under the longest episode we've ever done, Grady. And I think, you know what? If Atlantis has taught me anything, just doing okay is good enough, I suppose.
Oof. Oof, big oof.
So Grady, final thoughts on the movie.
Worth one watch. Don't think it is an S tier movie. Middle of the road. Deserved
it's a B
better.
Plus. I'd say it's a B plus.
Yeah, deserved better than when it released alongside Treasure Planet. I think both those movies deserved better.
It's no Iron Giant.
It's definitely no Iron Giant. It's definitely no some of the other movies we've watched. But yeah, still relatively solid of a movie.
I'm pretty much the same thing. I still have a lot of nostalgia for when I was a child, and in fact, if you saw this as a child, I'd say give it a watch. Like, it's fun to go back and like rewatch these kinds of films just to see how you feel about them now as an adult, now that your taste and perception on the world has changed. And yeah, I honestly never thought that I would be excited for a live-action Disney remake, but I mean, if there's any film that could use, like, if current day Disney took a swing at this, I think that could knock it out of the park with a live-action version.
I think so.
I never thought I'd welcome that, but hey, here we go. The video game is genuinely worth a try. It surprised me a lot, but hey, it's actually a really good video game. Okay, it's not amazing. It's got like a 7. It's got a 73 on like Metacritic, but it's still a pretty solid game. So, which surprised me.
Does that mean you're going to ask me what movie's next now?
Oh, I don't know how to feel about that. Okay, so, dear listener, we have just finished our season of animation where I got to pick pretty much every film that we did this month because I love animated movies, so this film was kind of my thing. Now we're passing it over to Grady. And Grady, what theme have you chosen for the next set of movies we're going to be covering?
I'd like to point out I've chosen a theme for the next 3 sets of movies, but the very next set, Campion suggested, and I liked the idea that we were going to do a pro wrestling season. Season of 4 movies that featured pro wrestlers, either didn't get a massive mainstream release, one was a cult classic, one is a movie that I enjoyed as a child, and another one, I guess, again, just didn't really get the hype. A little bit newer of a movie. You might notice when Grady picks movies, they come out, they're a little bit newer.
Grady is one of those movies, Three Ninjas Battle at Mega Mountain starring Hulk Hogan, WWE Superstar Legends.
I would never do that to you.
Okay, I'm gonna make one more guess. Just give me a yes or no, alright? Just one more guess.
Okay.
Is Gremlins 2 on that list?
Gremlins 2 is not on this list.
Oh, that's interesting. Alright, okay. So Grady, what film are we going to be doing next week? What is the first film in the season of Grady, as I am dubbing it?
The 17th episode of this podcast, the first episode of the Pro Wrestling Season Campion, is... Three Ninjas High Noon at Mega Mountain!
What? I thought we were doing They Live!
I changed the order on you, baby!
Oh, no! I was looking forward to it! I'm like Keith David, Roddy Piper, John Carpenter? Yeah, that sounds like an amazing time!
I've blown my audio.
We agreed that They Live was going to be the first one!
Three Ninjas 4 High Noon at Mega Mountain.
This is why he hit the schedule from me. I'm not allowed to see the schedule anymore, so we can pull crap like this.
It is a good movie, and you're going to enjoy it. If you want to watch the other Three Ninjas films in the lead-up, that's your own prerogative.
God damn it. Oh.
For the record, I prefer Three Ninjas 2, but Three Ninjas 4 features Hulk Hogan and fit the theme.
That's the worst one!
It is the worst one.
I saw part of that movie as a kid. Not the whole thing, but I have seen part of it.
Three Ninjas 4 is, I believe, what tanked the franchise.
I'm pretty sure Three Ninjas 4 is considered one of the worst films ever made.
Look, it's a good film.
So, High Noon at Mega Man. Oh god, which Hulk Hogan was this? This is late 90s Hogan?
Yeah.
It's not the worst Hogan, but still.
Look, trust me. Sometimes, you gotta start with the one you're not sure you're gonna like the taste of. You're in for a wild ride throughout this entire season.
I thought it was an 80s movie. I thought, well, at least it's gonna be 80s Hogan, like the best one. But no, this is declining, trying to hang on to its relevance, Hogan.
This is barely can move, bald as hell, Hogan.
Is this post NWO Hogan?
Oh, 100%.
That's the second best. The second best Hogan is the NWO one. God damn it!
Well, congratulations.
Granted, this isn't racist Hogan, so it's not the worst one. But still.
They were all racist Hogan. By dragging it out, by complaining about Three Ninjas, Campion, you have officially made this the longest episode of the Cult Potato.
Yippee for me.
And it was because of 10 minutes of hating on Three Ninjas that you haven't even watched yet.
I watched some of it, alright? And even when I was a kid, I thought it was shit.
Look, take your critical eye off and just watch and enjoy my stupid film.
We're gonna come back next week and you're gonna hate that movie more than me. I guarantee it.
It's got Jim Varney.
Oh, joy! Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us today on Cult Potato, the Cult Movie podcast. For joining us on our discussion for Atlantis, The Lost Empire. The last good movie we'll ever be covering on this godforsaken podcast.
There's nothing wrong with Three Ninjas.
Whatever. As always, I am your host, Campion, and joining me is a man who is dead to me, Mr. Grady Hooker. This has been the Lexicon of Law, and we will see you all next time.
Three Ninjas is a good film!